Hey guys, welcome to the second episode of Humans of Caltra, a series showcasing some of the awesome goals people are working on with Caltra. I'm Jerry. I'm building Caltra, a tool to help people reach their personal goals. And today we have a special guest, Mike Yates here, who's building the future of education. Welcome, Mike.
Sure, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. So do you want to give a quick intro about yourself and like what is like the overarching goals you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just in all sort of sense of the words working on education. I'm fortunate to be working with a school and a group of people that wants to innovate education. Work for a school called Alpha. Alpha is a school that uses adaptive learning software to or we use it in place of direct instruction. So where there's traditionally a math teacher, we would use a math app. Where there's traditionally a reading teacher, we would use a reading app. And we do that because math, reading, science, writing, those things are very, very important. But we recognize that there is a more efficient way to teach those so that we can make room in our school day to do the things that everybody agrees are really important, like teach public speaking, conflict management, life skills, financial literacy, all those things. We design a school that kids love coming to, because I think like in the traditional world of education, we've neglected the idea that kids should love coming to school, but like all of a sudden you graduate and everybody thinks that you should love where you work, right? So we expect kids to be somewhere that they hate for 18 years and then like all of a sudden find their passion when they graduate. So we're trying to do those things. And outside of Alpha, I'm building Guide, which is a social e-learning app that teaches life skills to high school students through micro video content. So where there is a TikTok, we want to use a similar type of atmosphere to teach kids skills that think we know map to success in college and their career field. And then I do a couple of volunteer things, some stuff with some nonprofits and everything like that. So just all around building the future of education to have an impact wherever I can.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's like spreading your work across like so many different areas. When you kind of like touching on that like adaptive education, so I think it's kind of interesting how like you have a focus on like the life skills and have the focus on like the people skills. So you feel like those are better taught by people, whereas like math and reading, that's like more like can be done with apps or
Yeah, I mean, so like I'll say like education is a human endeavor, period, right?
yeah.
And a lot of the times, like when I talk to people about the school where I work, everyone says like, oh, like you're trying to replace teacher. And we're like, no, I'm not. We are trying to optimize for the things that make sense in education, which is the human moment, right? So if we can condense the academic portion of the school day to 2 hours as opposed to 6 to 8 hours, then we're winning, because in the micro and the macro, you can spend more time with kids, right? Like I can walk a kid through how to use Scratch, a coding platform, or I can spend 2 hours a day with a student practicing a public speech because they're not spending an hour per day per subject in a lecture, right? They're able to actually do the math as opposed to hearing the math, right? The adaptive app puts them in the subject and lets them practice, fail, learn, and repeat, right?
Very
So
cool.
the process is super, super helpful for students. So we think all of them are important. We just recognize that there are no apps to teach life skills, right?
Yeah.
We've got to do that. So we need to move the academics along as fast and efficiently as possible. The interesting thing about Alpha is that you would expect that students don't perform well on standardized tests, but actually on the MAP assessment, which many schools in the nation take, most of our students are in the 90th percentile of the nation. So
Wow.
these are like top 10% kids. They're not particularly like little geniuses. They just work hard, right? Like
Uh-huh.
they're just part of the culture. So I
Yeah.
think what we're doing is pretty simple, but we
That's
optimize for both.
That's super cool. Is it like for what type, is it elementary school or middle school, high school? Like how many kids are you working with?
Now we are K through 12. So
Wow.
this
Yeah.
we will have. I think we're aiming for like 150 kids. I'm not really sure the number, but we are K through 12. We service all grades.
Yeah, that's super awesome. Cool. So kind of like taking a step back, like what got you into education? Like why are you so passionate about like changing education, changing schools?
Yes, like growing up, my mom was a teacher, and she used to tell me, "She's like, Mike, don't be a teacher because you don't get paid enough." And I was like, oh, I'll stay away from that. So, I grew up hating school. I thought school was worthless. I didn't see the connection between school and my life. I remember being in like the 8th grade doing like matrices, thinking like, when am I ever going to do this in my real life? Like, I feel like once I got past 3rd grade math, I was done with. I was like, I don't need anything else. I just need a calculator. So when I got out of college, I became really interested in sort of deconstructing the environment that I thought was so worthless for me, because I didn't want other kids to feel that way. So I started building education programs with the United Way. I built literacy programs in the schools. I built college tutoring programs in some schools in the down in Texas, and that got me interested and started thinking, like, even though my mom said don't go in education, like, what would happen if I actually
Yeah.
did? So I started teaching, and I ended up loving it. But I was so saddened by the system in which I had to teach. I bounced around the public, private, and charter, and I figured out that public, private, charter school are all the same system, just by a different name. It's all traditional, right? And it's all broken, and I think we know that, but we still trust this broken system, because if there's one thing that the traditional school system is, it's consistent. So I started sort of looking and researching, trying to build my own school, and I found Alpha through LinkedIn, actually.
Oh, wow.
And became a part of this awesome, like, amazing adventure that has set my life on this whole new trajectory, on this path to changing the way education looks, feels, and works.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like, so you felt like traditional education is like a box that like you're trapped in, or like a template you're forced to conform to, and like you're just trying to break out of that box and change. That's super cool.
Like, I think that's the best way to put it, though. The way you put it, like, traditional education is the template. Like,
Yeah.
here's what you should, like, fill in the blanks,
Uh huh.
and hopefully fill them in better than your neighbor. You'll go to an Ivy League school, right? And you'll get a good job.
Yeah.
Pay off the debt. But, what about the people that want to write their own template, right? So I love that.
Yeah, that's super cool. So like kind of like when you got started teaching and working with these programs, like was there like something that you didn't expect, or like actually like working with students changed the way you view education? Like
Yeah. Well, when I went into teaching, my first year of teaching, I made a lot of mistakes. I was a high school speech teacher. I was a basketball coach. I was like the assistant to the athletic director, like, all in one year. And I learned that year that kids are far more capable of doing amazing things than we think. Right? And I think that the major struggle of the traditional school system is that people think that kids are helpless, right? People think, like, shield the kids away from this, shield the kids away from that. When the truth is, if you just expose them to it, and like give them guidelines and boundaries, like, kids can do amazing things, right? Like,
yeah.
I posted on LinkedIn a while ago, like, how young is too young for LinkedIn,
Uh-huh.
right? And the post blew up. Like, I'm still getting comments on it, and some people are like, "You're gonna damage kids if you let them get on LinkedIn at 13." And I'm like, "You're on Snapchat and like Instagram and TikTok, but you don't want them on LinkedIn at 13." Right? So, like, I just think that kids are far more capable than we like to imagine they are.
For sure. Yeah, I feel like from like I've like taught at I'm a volunteer at like elementary schools, worked with kids before, and I feel like it's like that moment where you teach them something and like they get it, and then like they take that and run with it, and they go like above and beyond what you're teaching them. That's like the most rewarding part, and that's like what's awesome about teaching.
Yeah,
So
that's what it's about, man. That's awesome, Jay.
yeah, so it's super cool what you're doing. I think it's awesome. Cool. So alpha adaptive learning, change the way, and then guide you said was more like for like short form videos like TikTok or Vine type content. Um, kind of like, do you see that like does that fit into alpha, or is that like a separate thing, or how do you view that?
So guide is a separate thing from alpha.
Yeah.
I mean, like, hopefully we can get kids at alpha and use the app, right? Simply because we're doing more life skills than anyone. But
Yeah.
really, guide is meant for the kid that doesn't have access to a school like alpha, right? Like, guide is meant for the kid that wants to learn life skills, or that recognizes, like, I need to learn financial literacy, and I don't have $500 to pay for a master class, right? Like, I don't know how to use LinkedIn yet.
Yeah.
Right? They can go to an app where they're comfortable, where there are kids their age, where there are creators that they like and that they know. and they can learn that content and use that content. We got all kind of stuff planned for the app and like different iterations of it, but we are hoping that Guide can be a sort of like multi-tiered, multi-level solution to teach life skills through micro content. So whether it's middle school, high school, community college, we hope that we can be that bridge, because everybody knows that there is a life skills gap, right? Like,
Yeah.
like Google is starting to turn developers away. They're like, I don't care how talented you are, like you should be able to communicate. And as long as that's the case, like as automation and AI and machine learning, like when that's at scale, people are gonna have to be more human than ever, which means that life skills, like that's super important. So we want to be, we want to offer a service. We want to serve people and helping them prepare themselves for the future of work, the future of education, the future of technology, just the future in general.
Yeah, I think it's really cool how like you're focusing on humans and like the human aspect of it. And like also empowering like people who don't have resources, like basically scaling the new form of education you're doing through Alpha, like through software. I think it's super cool.
Yeah, bro. Everybody thinks automation is like about eliminating, but it's actually about maximizing human potential. Right? Like if I can take the things off my hands that I don't like doing, then I can like do all the stuff that I'm really great at a lot.
Yeah, that's super cool. Cool. So Guide, Alpha, managing nonprofits, in terms of doing all this work in education, like do you have like systems? How do you like manage all of this work, all of this? How do you manage to work on so many different things at once?
So I have been bouncing from tool to tool, trying to figure out like what works best for me. I've worked in Google Sheets. You know, I've done the to-do. There's a todo.com. You know, I've used a physical notebook. I have, you know, trying to figure out like what's the best way for me to be productive. And I started using Google Keep a while ago. And I like Google Keep because my productivity flow was on my computer, but it was too limited for me. So I needed something that was with a little more capability. And then I saw a mutual connection of ours posted on LinkedIn about Caltra, and I was like, I will check this out, because that was the day that I just like lost my journal, and I was like, what do? I need something. And I got on Caltra and was like, yo, like this is dope. And I remember like messaging you like, yo, Jerry, that was awesome. I'm going to try to get some of my students to use it. And so part of the thing that like, one of the things that I do at Alpha is like, we have to help students be successful. And one of those ways is like, you got to get organized, bro. So this is a good tool because they're on laptops for the first couple hours of the day anyway. So it works out so well. And for me, as I've been on this journey of like entrepreneurship and like creating models as opposed to like existing within the model, I have learned that like the most important thing is gratitude, right? Like I work now out of gratitude. Like, I'm so grateful to not be in a regular classroom and not have a 30-minute lunch, right? Like that, like I put everything I have into my job because I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that like I have 4 kids. Like my kids can go to like this super cool school where they are going to like maximize their potential. So I work really, really hard, and Caltra has like they have like a freaking gratefulness tool. Like, what are you grateful for today? Like, and I get to write that down every day. I write my kids' names, I write my wife's name, right? And even though like some people were like, why do you write the same thing every day? It's like, cause I go through the process, right? And I think that's what's game changing about Caltra. It's game changing that you give people a place to write down and journal what they are thankful for. No other productivity tool that I know of does that. And no one does it as well, right? Like it's just right there on the same page. So I love it.
Yeah, for sure. I think I've heard a ton of great feedback from like the wellness tool, like the gratefulness. I think kind of we were talking about this earlier, how like in education, you're trying to bring that like human element to teaching and education. That was something I got a lot of my feedback for Caltra, and like a lot of what I was trying to do is bring that human element to work. Like when we're doing work, we should like feel good about the work we're doing. We should feel grateful about the work we're doing. Like work and like gratefulness does not have to be like different things, and they're actually like very much together, and they're tied together. So it's awesome that like that idea was able to be like transmitted through like a tool like Caltra. So yeah, that's cool. Yeah. So wellness is something that's super important for you. So was there like any other difficulty in terms of like task management or productivity? Like I think you talked about you liked having all your stuff in one place. Like what
Yeah,
other problems does culture like solve for you?
yeah. I mean, it's just that. Like, I use my laptop a lot, so like I
Yeah.
need my tool on my laptop. Like you guys just added reminders, which is really good, like due dates and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
But for me, it was also like because I do a lot of different stuff. So if
Yeah.
I'm just working pen and paper or like a normal to do list, sometimes like I get like it, items can get lost in translation. But the fact that like you can set a long term goal and then each short term goal can be attached to a long term goal is next level. Right? Because for me, I all of my long term goals are just the different buckets of work that I have to do. So like
Yeah,
guide
same.
and alpha gets a color and
Mhm.
content creation gets a color, right? So for me, like I can see every day, like, oh, I got 3 yellows, I got 3 things to do for guide, right? And I know how to prioritize just but based on color coding. So I love the long term goals because it allows me to sort of catenate the work that I have to do.
Yeah, super cool. Kind of like how like your goals kind of like are like the different buckets of work you're doing, but like what's like your thought process for like when you're like creating tasks or like creating something to do? Is it more like something comes up and like you're reacting to it and building tasks, or like I'm just curious to hear like what
Yeah.
is your workflow with Culture?
So some things are recurring, right? Like,
Mhm.
I'm a big fan of Gary Vaynerchuk,
Yeah,
and Gary preaches the $1.08 strategy on social, right? Like every comment interaction that you get, and you give $1.80 every single day. So I set that as to daily, right? So every day it comes up and it's in my list, and I use it. I write for this amazing publication that shameless plug. Everybody should go read it.
yeah.
Be on Apple News, the Mogul, and I set a reminder in a Mogul Millennial article, right? So I use those differentiations in like timing of the task to help me like figure out like what I need to prioritize. So when I look at like what I'm doing,
Mhm.
I have a family, right? So like the
Yeah,
stakes are real for me. So I prioritize based on like income, right? Like I'm compensated very well to do what I love to doing at Alpha. So if there's a task for Alpha, that goes before everything else. And then Guide is my biggest side project. So
uh-huh.
Guide comes right after Alpha. Then my content creation and everything else, right? So I make sure to prioritize based on like what I know real world is important.
Yeah, super cool. Outside of like your side project and your work, do you put any like personal goals you're working on, or like anything from like your personal life in there? Like, how do you separate out like the work Mike versus like
Yeah, so
Norm Mike
my
himself? Yeah.
my personal goals really just kind of sit in the mind of my wife, right? Like I use Caltra strictly for work,
Uh-huh.
um, because I have personal goals, right? Like like uh, I have like a weight loss goal, right? Like
Yeah.
actual illness, but those like stay with my wife, right? Because
Interesting.
um, like for me, culture is super useful for work because it's on my desktop, like it's on my or it's in my web browser. So the things that I'm not online for, and I'm pretty particular about unplugging when I can. So when I unplug, I don't want to go back and forth. Like I gotta stay unplugged. So I really just use it for work.
Yeah. Super cool. Like I think that's a great way to separate. What got you into like? Did you try unplugging, or like how did you get into that? I'm pretty curious to hear about it.
Really, like it's just my wife, right? Like
Uh-huh. Yeah.
she's the biggest support there. But like quite frankly, I have 4 kids, and I have a legacy that I have to leave with my kids, and so I just like straight up want to be remembered in a lot of different ways. But the number
Yeah.
one way that I want to be remembered, right? Like the reason why I want to make impact is so that one day my kids can be like, I'm super proud that that dude's my dad. So
Yeah.
one day
That's
my
awesome.
wife can be like, I'm super proud that I married that guy. Because they're so important to me, like when my wife is like, hey, time to get off the phone, like I gotta unplug because she's my number one priority. Right?
Mhm.
My kids come right after her.
Yeah.
So being away from my work and my tech sometimes is what I need.
Yeah, no, that's super cool how like you split and you have that priority, because I know I have a lot of friends and I know a lot of people who struggle with that, where they're like they're always working, they're like 100% on it and they can't like make time for themselves.
No, I
Um,
struggle with it, but I just have somebody that snaps me out of it, right?
there you go. Yeah, if that works for you, works super well. Um, I think kind of jumping back into work and management. What were like some of their systems before Cultura? Like you said, you use journals, you use Keep.
Yeah,
Um, kind of like what were some kind of like processes you used before?
I just used a to-do list in a journal,
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah,
it was something that I kept this journal with me every day. I took notes in it, and then I made this to-do list. And it was literally like I drew check boxes, and when I was done with it, I checked off.
that's crazy. Yeah,
Yeah, and for a long time that worked because I've never done as much as I'm doing now at the same
yeah,
time. And so now that I have so many things to juggle, I love that, but I gotta stay organized in a different sort of way. And the to-do list in the journal just wasn't cutting it anymore.
yeah. No, that's super cool how like it's like when you have like five tasks at once, when you have six buckets of work at once, it's super hard. Um, cool. I think just like we're finishing up, like what we talked a little bit about what you see in the future of education, or kind of like if you had like all the resources in the world, like if you're given all the opportunities, like what changes would you make, or what would you like have alpha everywhere, or like what do you see the future of education as?
So okay, so this
It's
is
pretty tough.
I the future of education is gonna be interesting. I just wrote this LinkedIn post about what education is going to look like in the year 2030. I think in the future of education, and like I'm gonna you're gonna see people start to mistrust the public school system and the private school system and the charter school system, because eventually people are gonna figure out that these are just school by another name. Like charter schools do things differently than public schools, and private schools do things differently than both. But at the end of the day, it is all a teacher in the front of a room who is lecturing and doing activities in between lectures so that they can disseminate information to a child. I think
Yeah.
that in the next 15 to 20 years, the college system is going to implode on itself. And when that happens, schools like Lambda School and Flatiron School are going to be the training forces of the day. You'll see Google create their own school and train the people they want to see in their program. You'll see so many innovative options start to pop up that fewer and fewer people will choose public school because the innovative options will now become accessible. Now, the few options that are out there are not necessarily accessible for every kid. So people in droves are still choosing public education. But I think people will stop lying to themselves in the future, because we know that the traditional school, not just public school, public, private, charter, we know they don't work. We know it.
Yeah.
But we keep sending our children there, and I think that like our generation and the ones right after us, like my younger brother is in college, like them, and like we're going to be the first generation to say no. Like you don't have to go to college, son or daughter. Like you could go start your own business. You can go live an incredible life doing X, right? So I'm looking forward to that day. But I guess if I were to sum it up, the future of education is choice. It is
Yeah.
on demand. It is learning that comes to you. It's dynamic, and it is learning with the student in mind,
Mhm.
not the instructor.
Yeah, super cool. I think what you talked about, like focusing on the human element, focusing on like applications rather than just like focusing on direct application of why you're learning this is super cool. And I think like even on YouTube now, or like even on the internet, there's like scrapes of content of like people teaching classes, people like learning stuff. So that's awesome to see
Yeah.
like what people can do with it, and like what like educators can do with that and like run with it. That's super awesome.
Hey,
Yeah, cool. Mike, thanks for coming on. It was awesome to talk about education, talk about goals, talk about like how to manage working on six different things at once. Um, where can we find your stuff, or where where can we find you to support you?
I am on LinkedIn and Twitter all the time. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Mike Yates. I think I've done a good job of being top of mind on LinkedIn. So if you search Mike Yates, I will be the first one.
Yeah.
And then on Twitter, it is at just Mike Yates.
Awesome. Cool. I'll put your links below. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Mike.
Talk to you soon, man.
See ya. Thank you guys so much for making it to the end of the video. Let me know what you guys think about the future of education in the comments below. Check out the previous episode on entrepreneurship and check out culture.co to reach your goals today. Thanks, guys.